The demon named Nalabgo, commander of Purgatory, watched the departing figure of Roland the brave warrior, lamenting in his heart that a lowly human could defeat him. Before the flames consumed his body completely, he screamed out a declaration that defeating a commander of the Demon King's legion was impossible. Roland heard Nalabgo's words, spun around and stabbed him once more with his sword, affirming that he was the victor today. The nightmare of humanity began when the Demon King descended upon the world. The Demon King destroyed cities, annihilated countless nations, and took the lives of innumerable people. And what was most despicable was that he made the despair of humans his favorite delicacy. To ensure his invasion and suppress resistance from humans, the Demon King placed his commanders scattered across various territories. 1,000 years had passed since the Demon King's descent. Throughout all that time, humanity fought against the demon race, yet not a single commander under the Demon King had been defeated, until the brave warrior Roland appeared, coming from Okuna village on the outskirts of the Gringold Kingdom. Roland returned victorious to the cheers of the villagers. They praised him, saying he had done it. He had truly defeated a commander. Some others curiously asked if it was true that he had fought for 3 days and 3 nights without rest, as the rumors said. The village elder simply spoke with quiet certainty that he was the pride of this village. Roland looked around at everyone present and thanked them, saying it was all thanks to everyone's support. His gaze stopped on someone who had just arrived. Roland called out loudly so she could hear that he had returned. Felicia, his childhood friend, smiled and welcomed him back, saying she knew he could do it. The villagers watching this scene quietly dispersed to give the 2 young people their private space. Felicia looked at Roland with sparkling eyes and asked if he had stopped by the royal capital. Not expecting that he would be called the first hero in the world to defeat a commander of the Demon King, she pretended to be upset, saying the entire kingdom was celebrating, yet he came back here. Roland laughed and replied that even if he stayed, those people only wanted him to become a knight of the kingdom, but he had no intention of leaving this village. To reassure Felicia further, he added that before returning here, he had left everything for Solana to handle. She warned Roland not to cause trouble for his little sister. Hearing this, an image immediately came to his mind of Solana warning him before he left not to make her big sister cry. At that time, he had replied to the young girl that he still had not defeated the Demon King out there. The girl did not agree with this viewpoint. Solana asked if he intended to make her sister wait until the world was at peace. Solana promised she could handle everything here as long as he returned, and proved himself to be a real man to her sister. Back in the present, Roland took out a gift from his person to give to Felicia. She opened her eyes wide in surprise and asked if he really bought a gift, secretly laughing to herself that she had never seen him give any gifts before. Yet he told her not to be surprised. Breaking through Felicia's defenses, Roland opened the box to reveal a pair of rings and asked to marry her. He expressed that in these unstable times, one never knew if there would be a tomorrow. Even if he eliminated one commander, peace was still far away, but throughout that journey, he wanted to be the one to protect her. Roland looked into Felicia's teary eyes and asked if she would allow him to protect her. The 2 of them had been orphans since childhood, always supporting each other throughout those years. In this world teeming with demons, Felicia had never lost her smile. She was beloved by everyone around her, and was also the one who gave them hope. For Roland, who only knew how to wield a sword, Felicia was a precious treasure, so at the very least, he had sworn to protect her at all costs. It was precisely because of this oath that Roland had always trained diligently, even though he was a brave warrior who had just returned victorious. Felicia sat by the tree waiting for him to practice until late at night before reminding him to at least rest tonight. Roland replied that it was precisely because of tonight that he needed to train more to protect his happiness. Felicia stopped telling him to rest and instead made a request, asking if he could make a promise to her, to promise that he would live longer than her, because Felicia knew he would sacrifice himself the moment she was in danger. More than that, she believed he would be the one to bring peace to this world, and it was this belief that gave her the motivation to keep living in this cruel world. Felicia blurted out that she could not bear a world without Roland. Although Roland understood what she meant to convey, he pretended to reply that he had no intention of dying, and if he died, who would protect her? He told Felicia not to worry, that he would practice a little more and then go to sleep. She could not believe her ears and asked if he had forgotten that starting today they were husband and wife. Looking at Roland's embarrassed expression, she instead found it extremely amusing. Her strongest swordsman in the world was incredibly adorable. Roland was still smiling happily when he noticed the presence of evil approaching. The demon that arrived created an overwhelming pressure that made it hard to breathe, a completely different level from the commander. His instinct told him he needed to cut this one in half, but after he struck, the demon was unharmed, while his entire body was stuck to the ground. Roland was bewildered, wondering what kind of power this was that he could not move at all. The demon praised him, saying his sword was sharp indeed. No wonder Meladogo was defeated, but it was precisely for this reason that he could not let him continue to run rampant. The dignity of the Demon King absolutely could not allow this to continue. It had been 100 years since a commander was killed, so he had to come here personally. Roland was shocked to see the Demon King destroy the magic in his hand, not understanding his action. Did he no longer want to kill him? The Demon King asked Roland if he knew that his goal was not death, but the emotion called despair. He took out something else called the Ancient Curse. Any human who touched it would become a monster. Roland understood what his next action would be and ran at full speed toward Felicia to protect her. The Demon King laughed loudly, telling him to hurry, or the most precious thing to him would be absorbed. No matter how Roland ran, he could not catch up, and until the final moment, he could only scream in despair as the person he had just promised to protect transformed into a monster right before his eyes. Felicia's entire body transformed, turning a beautiful girl into someone covered in spikes, deformed. Roland dodged her attack and called out Felicia's name loudly, saying that even if her appearance changed, it was fine, he still loved her. Felicia seemed not to take these words to heart and continuously looked for opportunities to attack Roland. She had completely lost her self-awareness. He changed his plan, deciding to block Felicia's attacks and protect her until his stamina ran out. Roland dodged gracefully while telling her to calm down, that they still had a happy life ahead of them, encouraging her that there would surely be a way to break the curse. Roland shouted that he would not let anyone hurt her until then. Felicia, having completely lost her will, slashed at Roland without mercy. He tried to dodge while not hurting her, murmuring that he would protect her at all costs. The Demon King watched their actions and sneered that the strongest swordsman in the world was only this much. However, being able to defend without hurting the opponent was truly unexpected. He challenged Roland, asking what he thought, if he could find a way to break this curse. Roland angrily shouted for him to shut up, saying that once he calmed Felicia down, the Demon King would not be able to keep his life. The Demon King seemed to realize something and replied wickedly that he was right. Things would go nowhere like this. Protecting the mutated monster and ending this situation, Roland was indeed capable of doing both, but then he would not be able to see despair. Roland looked at him in confusion as his entire body became immobile again, and unease rose in his heart. Next, a dark force came and took away the arm holding his sword, the blade rolling on the ground. The Demon King thought this was more interesting. Roland screamed in pain, thinking this was terrible, that he had lost his right hand and could no longer block Felicia's attacks. His body collapsed from the pain, and his vision blurred. Before his eyes, he could only see Felicia approaching, and he wondered if this was the moment of death. At this very moment, all he could think of was Felicia and his promise to her. Her voice echoed beside him saying that if he died, she would feel so lonely that she would be left behind in this cruel world. Roland painfully accepted the truth that he no longer had much time to protect her, but he would protect the promise between them. Roland gathered all his remaining strength, took the sword, and stabbed toward Felicia, shouting that he would not leave her alone. Because he only had one unfamiliar hand left, he did not have enough strength to kill Felicia in one strike, cursing inwardly. In her final resistance, Felicia's hand pierced through Roland's body, and both fell at the same time. The Demon King laughed loudly, saying she was once his wife, yet he cut her in half just because she became a monster, truly befitting the title of the strongest swordsman in the world. But at this point, his choice was too late and his life ended here. After losing consciousness, Roland was brought to an all-white space. He looked around and asked if this was the afterlife. He clearly remembered telling Felicia that he would protect the promise between them, that he would keep living even if she died, but in the end, he died too. Roland clenched his fist, thinking that ending up like this, who could he protect? He prayed that Felicia would be happy. A voice interrupted Roland. She said Felicia had been happy. A girl emanating a gentle light briefly introduced herself to Roland as the angel Myosotis. Although she wanted to tell him more information, there was not much time left. She repeated to Roland that Felicia had been very happy. Though she could not explain the reason, she could empathize. Hearing the necessary information, Roland replied that the angel was truly kind. Myosotis denied this, saying she was not kind, especially once he knew what she was about to say. The angel offered a deal. She could resurrect him, but in exchange, he needed to defeat the Demon King. For the safety of this world, he could not be allowed to continue his rampage. Myosotis let him know this would be a journey of revenge full of despair, and even so, did he want to fight again. Roland murmured that resurrection and defeating the Demon King were not conditions for him, because he would certainly have to kill him. The moment he finished speaking, Roland was transported to another dimension. The angel told him that when the world was saved, his wish would also come true. However, she had to apologize to him first. Even she could not restore his right hand. His title as the strongest swordsman in the world would disappear. Roland woke up in the freezing rain, beside Felicia's body. The Demon King had long since departed. He looked at the arm the angel had remade, which was Felicia's arm. He stared at it blankly for a while, wondering if he would fight with this very arm. He continued to ask hopelessly if he had to keep fighting without resisting while Felicia had been turned into a monster. Roland held Felicia's body close and wept loudly, his tears mingling with the bone-chilling rain. Roland buried Felicia right beside their house, keeping only the ring he had given her to wear on his person. Roland whispered an apology to Felicia, asking her to forgive him for having to fight with this arm. A monster passing by on the road heard the noise and came in. He was shocked to see that the clothes the monster was wearing belonged to a villager. He wondered suspiciously if everyone had become monsters like Felicia. No matter what, he could not die here. He grabbed the sword on the ground and apologized to everyone, but he had to take action. But when the sword touched Roland's arm, a numbing pain shot through it, and the sword dropped to the ground. He clutched his arm in agony, thinking he could not hold the sword. He recalled Mausodis's words from before that even she could not restore his right arm, and his title as the strongest swordsman in the world would disappear. Only now did he fully understand the meaning of the angel's apology. Roland murmured so that was what the angel meant. If he could not use a sword, he could only fight barehanded. Since it was his first time fighting with bare hands, Roland instinctively used all of his strength to punch the monster. The powerful explosion decisively tore a circular hole through its belly. Even Roland was extremely surprised by the strength of the right arm he had received. Another monster approached and he used his bare hand to crush its head. The monster's head immediately deformed and shattered into pieces. Roland raised his blood-covered arm to look at it, not expecting it to be this terrifyingly cold. The power in this arm was beyond human capability. An ordinary villager passing by saw Roland's arm and screamed loudly, asking what was wrong with that arm. He panicked and backed away, shouting that it was impossible, that Roland had been turned into a monster too. Roland wanted to explain to him, but the man had already run away in terror, still mumbling that it was impossible. Seeing that person run into the fire inside the village, Roland felt guilty. Perhaps he was not wrong, but he could no longer stay here. News from Okuna village quickly spread everywhere, reaching the soldiers in the capital. Solana sat eating inside while listening to the people around her discuss how half the villagers had become monsters. Not stopping there, they had also gone on to slaughter the remaining survivors. Not only that, the soldiers also heard that even the brave warrior Roland had been turned into a monster. Someone did not believe it and asked back if it was really true, since he was the one who had taken down a commander of the demons. Another replied that was probably why the demon race had set their sights on him. The rumors spread even further when the kingdom was preparing to hunt down the monster Roland, and commissions had been sent to the guilds. Solana passed by and heard them lament that it was truly sad, that someone who was originally a hero had now become a target for hunting. Everyone sighed sadly that since he had become a monster, what else could be done? Solana placed the empty bowl back on the table, silently calling out for her brother. After leaving the village, Roland traveled to the Dendron wasteland and began his training journey in earnest. He trained his arm by using large boulders to create pressure. Roland did not know how many days had passed as he isolated himself in this wasteland to train his right arm. The movement of the arm was still the same as before, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not hold a sword. In his heart, he did not really want to hold the sword that had taken the life of his beloved in his hand, so he decisively gave up on that. His current goal was to master the arm first. Compared to using sword techniques, his hand-to-hand combat was still too lacking. To kill the Demon King, he needed to become even stronger. Suddenly, in the middle of the desolate desert, he heard his little sister's voice. Solana shouted that she had found him and attacked without giving Roland time to prepare. Hearing Roland call her name, she was shocked and asked if he could still speak human language. The girl adjusted her gloves and told him to just accept his fate and prepare to die. Roland looked at her in surprise and called out to wait, saying he had not turned into a monster. Solana attacked without mercy, her eyes full of tears as she scolded him not to lie. If he really was still her brother, he would not have abandoned Sister Felicia. Going back to her childhood memories, after her parents passed away, Solana became an orphan who continuously cried and demanded to see her parents. Felicia sat down beside her and comforted her, saying it was okay, that from now on she would take the place of her mother. Solana innocently asked her sister what about father then. Felicia stammered, not knowing how to answer, when Roland also sat down beside them and told the girl that from now on she could call him her big brother. Roland promised to take on the responsibility of father and take care of her. Solana had thought that the life of the three of them would be together forever like that. She was truly happy at that time. Thinking of the current reality where she had no one left beside her, Solana struck at Roland with all her strength. Fearing he would hurt his little sister, he could only continuously retreat and dodge without fighting back. Solana lost her patience and used a continuous pawn strike combo on him. She cursed him for being so stubborn, saying she had to liberate her brother as soon as possible. He was hit by this pawn strike quite hard and shouted loudly for Solana to stop. Roland extended his arm and said that although his hand looked like this, he was not a monster. Solana looked straight into his eyes and asked then why was Sister Felicia no longer here. Before coming here to find him, she had returned to the village and seen the grave beside the house. She could not accept it and screamed that if Roland was not a monster, then why had things turned out this way? Roland asked helplessly if she had already seen it. Solana covered her ears and did not answer. She knew monsters deceived people with words. It was Roland himself who had told her to consider him as her brother. She would not let her brother's body suffer anymore. She pulled out a bracelet and activated the stone-breaking fist, telling Roland to stop dodging. Roland easily avoided the attack and used a boulder to shield himself. He knew she was losing her composure. No matter how he explained now, she would not listen. He could not blame Solana. Suddenly learning two extremely devastating truths, that her sister had died and her beloved brother now looked like a monster. He affirmed this was not a misunderstanding, but he did not know how to make her understand. The truth was that he was not the one who killed Felicia. Roland rejected this thought of his, hoping she would understand might actually be the mistake. Right now he should quietly leave. Roland looked at his little sister one last time before leaving. At that moment, a monster appeared behind her wanting to ambush her. Solana was too consumed by anger to notice. He rushed toward her and shouted loudly for Solana to be careful. The monster only managed to push her down before being struck back by Roland. Lying on the ground, she habitually called out for her brother and sister, but only received endless emptiness in return until Roland's scolding voice awakened her. Roland sat fiercely on top of the monster and asked if they still wanted to take everything from him. They had taken away his peaceful life, the woman he loved, and his right arm that wielded the sword. Now it was Solana. Roland declared war, telling them to just wait. When he had enough strength, he would sweep everything clean in one go, not sparing a single life. After defeating the monster, Roland felt more clearly that when his hand grabbed it, something seemed to flow back into the arm and make it larger. Roland suspected that he could absorb the power of monsters, and this might be its ability. Roland murmured reproachfully that it was not gentle like Felicia at all. This was power taken through plundering. Night fell, and a fire was lit between Roland and Solana. After being saved, she believed what he said, but she still could not accept the truth that the Demon King had appeared and her sister had been turned into a monster. Roland looked at her terrified expression and apologized for not being able to protect her sister. He stammered painfully that he should have been able to protect Felicia, but lacked the ability and let Felicia die. The girl regretfully bowed her head and apologized to Roland. He must have been the one most affected. She cursed herself, saying damn it. She knew nothing and yet ran off to attack people. Roland replied that it was fine, that she was not at fault. Even if he wanted to avoid it, the one most to blame was himself for not being able to protect the one he loved. He began cursing the Demon King even more harshly. Then he painfully revealed the truth that the brave warrior Roland had died when he lost his sword and right arm. He no longer had a place in human society. He declared to his little sister that he would chase the Demon King to the ends of the earth and kill him with these very hands. Solana grabbed her brother's hand and said she would fight alongside him. They were family after all. She criticized him for always shouldering everything alone, saying that was not right because Solana was also Sister Felicia's little sister. Roland did not argue. She was absolutely right. He was not the only one who had lost someone he loved. The Demon King had also taken away a sister from Solana, and the mission of revenge was not his alone. A new day began. When the first rays of light arrived, Solana had regained her spirit and was ready for battle. She was ready to depart at any moment, but the problem was how they could find the Demon King. No one had ever known where the Demon King resided in any fixed region. He always appeared unexpectedly. Furthermore, any place he passed through would become desolate, so no one had ever been able to observe him. But when Roland killed one of the Demon King's commanders, he appeared. Roland calculated that he would go and kill the other commanders next. He said the Demon King had appeared right after he killed Nalago, so if that was the case, he would kill every single demon one by one. Solana understood what he was saying. If so, she had a suggestion. In recent bounty missions, there was one person with a very large reward. She playfully informed Roland that there was another target besides him, which was the bounty for the specter of Malago. She explained in more detail that she had heard a ghost had appeared inside the castle of Malago, the one he had once defeated. If this was not just a rumor, this target should be chosen first. Roland had no objection. He told her to go then, to eliminate the ghost of Malago. The two formed a party and headed north, crossing the land-run wasteland and the forest to reach the castle of Malago. The kingdom had issued a warrant for Roland's capture, so during their journey, he had to wrap his arm tightly and cover his face. They also carefully chose to travel on roads with few people. Solana broke the tense atmosphere by asking her brother if it had been a long time since they had traveled together like this. When they first started out, they often took on conquest commissions together. Roland fell into nostalgia and agreed that it had been 2 years since they last formed a party together. Recently, his commissions had all been royal decrees with pre-arranged formations or extremely dangerous missions with low survival rates. Solana was an excellent martial artist, but he could not risk taking her to those places. However, the current situation was different. He had become stronger since then. Solana affirmed that as long as she and her brother were together, the two of them would definitely not lose to anyone. Roland hid his worries inside. He had continuously trained his swordsmanship that was honored as the best in the world, but it was still nothing compared to the Demon King. How could he tell his little sister this, saying it would only make her more anxious? Solana continued saying it was not just the two of them, but also their sister. She hugged Roland's right arm and cheered that it made 3 people. Solana asked if the angel had said she would grant him a wish, right? She had a belief that if so, the angel would have a way to bring her sister back. Until then, all 3 could join forces and fight together. This way of thinking was the best. Roland understood that because he was too gloomy, she was trying to cheer him up, just like how Felicia used to comfort her with hugs. He sighed that they really were sisters. Not wanting to disappoint Solana, he smiled and replied that he thought the same way. On their way forward, Roland thought about how when he lost his right arm and could not protect Felicia, he had thought he could not face anyone. But he was glad he had met Solana again. He swore he would fight with this arm and definitely protect his only remaining family, Solana. The two traveled until nightfall before stopping in front of a large, majestic castle with a gloomy atmosphere. Solana asked if this was Malago's castle. It was really huge. She asked further if he had come here to defeat Malago, and what was different now compared to then. Roland carefully observed that nothing had changed since the day he defeated him. He stared intently at a red flame glowing brightly. That throne was still burning, which meant Malago was still alive. He stepped back a few paces and told Solana to be on guard. He was still somewhere around here. At that moment, a child's voice rang out informing them that Malago was not here. This little demon child was Krones, the temporary caretaker of the castle. Seeing who had arrived, the child exclaimed, "Oh my, was this not the brave warrior Roland still alive?" The child had heard the news that the Demon King had come to take Roland's life. He did not wait for the child to finish rambling and rushed forward to take its life. But the demon child easily dodged. It screamed that was dangerous. He was still talking. Krones condemned Roland's behavior of attacking even children. He thought angrily that this little one was even faster than Malago. Was it really just a young demon? Krones evaluated him from above and said how delightful that it got to see that right arm. Was that not the arm of the woman who had been turned into a demon? It laughed loudly, saying it would have to report this to the Demon King. Roland lost his patience and asked who this brat was, where Malago was, and why he was still alive. Krones asked back if he thought a demon would answer that question, but since it was a kind demon, it would answer him. The child announced in a clear voice that Malago had headed to Akuna village, where the surviving humans were rebuilding. Solana cried out that it could not be. Roland's mood was no different as he asked himself if after doing all that, they still wanted to destroy more. Krones reminded them if they still wanted to waste time here with it. If they wanted to leave, it would not stop them. It told them to look. It did not even bother to attack them. Roland calculated angrily that he could not let this little demon go, but he did not know how long it would take to fight it. Solana reminded her brother that they had to hurry back to Akuna village. Roland made the decision to return to the village. He would save as many people as he could. He gave a warning to the little demon to just wait. He would not spare any demon. Krones arrogantly called out twice that it was so scared, no need to report. Watching the two leave, it thought there was no need to tell the Demon King. Something like this was much more interesting. At Roland's village, the commander Malago wanted to turn everything upside down. He wanted to know where exactly that boy's corpse was. In the 100 years under the Demon King's reign, Being trusted to rule countless territories was the greatest pride of the demon race, yet he had become the first commander to be defeated by humans. Malago could not accept this. He shouted loudly that he was looking for Roland for a rematch. He had returned from hell. He wanted to go down to hell again and drag him back up. This time he would definitely win. The villagers fearfully asked if Roland had not been turned into a monster by his demon. He could not believe his ears. Had the boy really been turned into a monster? The Demon King had not mentioned this. Malago pressed the unfortunate young man to continue speaking. Roland arrived just in time to stop his action, calling out that it was enough. Malago exclaimed in surprise that he was really still alive. Roland disagreed, saying that should have been his line. He laughed loudly and replied that there was no doubt then. At least he did not have to bother looking for a corpse. Malago declared a rematch, saying the previous result was wrong. Malago repeated his demand for a rematch to correct the previous mistaken result. But he was not in a hurry to strike first and looked at the third person, Solana, complaining that there were too many annoyances getting in the way. Solana knew he was talking about her and shouted not to think she would let him run rampant. She would fight too. He did not say much and simply snapped his fingers to summon a horde of small monsters into the village. Malago snorted coldly that the fire soldiers he created would burn the villagers to death. But if that meddlesome brat wanted to save them, he would not stop her. Solana cursed his vile tactics and asked what he thought human lives were worth, you coward. Malago replied that he only wanted to fight Roland, so he had no choice but to keep her occupied in this area. He declared this was a noble one-on-one battle. Roland told his little sister to go stop those monsters while he would take down Malago. He emphasized that Solana should go protect the villagers. He told her not to worry. He had defeated him once before, so there was no way he would lose again. Solana had no other choice and quickly ran toward the village. She did not forget to shout loudly that she would quickly defeat those monsters and come back. Malago was satisfied and picked up his weapon, saying then let them decide the result of that day. He noticed something and remarked that the situation seemed different from before. After looking for a while, he asked where that annoying sword that had cut him was because today he wanted to break it with his own hands. Roland warmed up his right arm joints and replied that he talked too much, so just start already. Malago growled in disagreement and said how boring, then he would come at him right now. Roland was a bit tense. What he had told Solana about having defeated him before and not being able to lose again was just to comfort her. Compared to him, someone who had lost his sword and could not yet control his arm well, this wicked Malago had been resurrected once. Somehow the balance had been reversed compared to that day. Even knowing this, Roland would not let himself be easily defeated. Malago on the other side had urgently launched a vicious attack. Roland utilized all his situational assessment skills. He calculated that treating his arm like a sword would not work. He could not confront directly, but had to gradually deflect the opponent's blade. Roland nimbly dodged Malago's first strikes. Even without a sword, his footwork and combat tactical thinking remained intact. Roland was filled with hope that with this arm, he could defeat him. His confidence was immediately crushed when Malago lifted his entire body and threw him aside, shouting that he was too weak. Roland fell to the ground thinking the difference between a sword and an arm was too great. It felt like Malago was reducing force by jumping backward. He sat up and looked at his opponent, murmuring if that was the case then. Malago's voice cut in asking if that was the case then what? He created a massive stream of fire rolling toward Roland, blocking all his escape routes. He informed him that the firepower from the abyss was on a completely different level. Roland dodged, and after hearing him speak, he silently acknowledged that it was true. If he got hit by that, his life would be over. Sitting down in a place unaffected by the fire, Roland thought the gap between his firepower and his opponent's was too large. This was not good. Malago challenged him, asking what was wrong. Had he become weaker? And that arm was just for show, right? He pretended to approach Malago and replied that was not right. Perhaps what he said that day was a mistake. Roland knew that dragging this out would not work. He suddenly attacked him at close range. Just as he thought, he had no other choice but to use the power of this arm. He shouted loudly to activate the plundering power. Immediately, several strange lines of light swirled around Malago. When he realized the power inside his body was being plundered, he became extremely angry and rushed to attack Roland. He took advantage of the power he had just plundered to strike back at his opponent, but it was not very effective. Malago countered that he was extremely surprised his power was being stolen, but the amount of power he had just returned was not enough to scratch him. Malago stopped all his movements and looked at Roland, saying the rematch he had been waiting for should have released his despair. But the result was no longer the same as before. He wanted to know what Roland hoped to gain back when he had become such a disgusting form. Roland actually looked at his own arm and repeated the 2 words his opponent had said. Disgusting. Malago asked what he wanted to argue about. How could that thing not be disgusting? The more he heard him speak, the angrier Roland became. He replied that he had no right to insult her arm. Malago acted as if he had just heard a comedy. He mocked and apologized for not knowing that was the arm of his lover who had been turned into a monster. At the end of his sentence, he emphasized how wonderful that was. The commander's mouth kept rambling that he was originally a hero, but now had to live in such a pitiful state. He promised that when he returned, he would talk to the Demon King and ask him to bring that girl back for him. At this moment, Roland's mind was filled only with anger, and he did not hear what he was saying. He silently apologized to Felicia for letting this scum speak such mocking words. Malago had teased enough and shouted loudly that he would not let himself lose to him again. Disappear already. The crimson hellfire he controlled surrounded Roland, waiting for an opportunity to attack him. Roland silently endured the pain and stole this power. He called out in silence that he had to steal more. By the time the surrounding flames had gathered completely onto Roland's body, Malago could not react in time to take them back. He looked at him in horror as he declared that he would strip all his flames away. Thanks to absorbing Malago's power, his right arm had been saturated with the power of the flames. He snorted coldly and asked if he was using the ability to steal opponent's power to steal his flames. He guessed further that because he could not absorb the flames, he had fallen apart and given up, right? Roland replied it was nothing. Malago heard the challenge and laughed coldly. Bold of him. That mouth that liked to speak unpleasant words, he would just slap it shut. At the same time, he spun the weapon in his hand and struck Roland's body, indeed causing him no small injury. Roland took this opportunity to endure the pain and steal more power. He would use this power to double the flames and strike back at him. Roland's arm pierced through the layers of burning fire and aimed straight at Malago's body to punch. The speed was so fast he could not move to dodge in time. After it passed, Malago looked at the weapon in his hand and muttered in horror, asking what had just happened. He could not see clearly. Roland's strike was not only covered in flames, fire shot from his elbow added more force to the punch. Malago calmed down and looked at the hammer in his hand, asking himself if the hammer was broken. He directly threw it away to avoid the hindrance, telling Roland not to get cocky just because he had stolen his fire. He said contemptuously that his firepower and skills were far from comparing to his. Malago decided he would demonstrate what the true power of fire was. Immediately his whole body seemed to be set ablaze as he rushed toward Roland to attack. He shouted angrily that if he wanted to compete in fire with him, he was 1,000 years too early. Roland refused to yield and raised his fist to block the opponent's attack. This hand-to-hand technique brought the two truly closer than ever before in their contest of strength. Malago could not harm his enemy and shouted loudly, cursing him as a stubborn fool, but his flames could still increase further. Roland felt the enormous power from him, but still stood firm and endured. He thought to himself how terrifying this was. His awakened right arm had also received heat resistance, but his body could not hold on much longer. A last stubborn spark remained in Roland's will, telling him that this level of firepower was exactly what he wanted. Being this brilliant could create a great opportunity for victory. After a while, Malago finally asked in bewilderment how he could still continue stealing his fire even in this state. He called out that was even better then. He would let him have it all. After saying this, he activated another even more terrifying surge of power. Roland was forced into painful screaming, saying he had already told him he would steal everything he threw out. Malago thought that just increasing his power would make Roland unable to endure, but he did not expect his fighting strength to be so high. By the time he realized this, all the fire on his body had been drained. Malago sat collapsed on the ground in confusion, crying out where his fire was. His body was so cold. Roland did not say much and used his arm full of firepower to lift the opponent's burning body and throw it down hard. He thought to himself that this arm had stolen all of Malago's power. It truly was a formidable strength. He praised it, saying it was worthy of being the flames of the Demon King's commander. But currently he could also feel the core of his power inside his arm. He guessed it was because he could not release all the power at once, but it seemed like dividing it into multiple times would be fine. Roland thought about using this arm to defeat each commander one by one and steal all their power. If that succeeded, the day he defeated the Demon King would not be far. Roland silently called Felicia's name and asked her to give him strength until that day. At that moment, Selena ran out from inside the village in a panic, loudly calling for her brother. Roland asked if she was okay and what happened to the remaining monsters. Selena reported that she had taken down most of them, and the rest had also self-combusted. She looked at Roland's arm in horror and screamed, asking if the wound was okay. Hearing Roland say it was fine and to leave here quickly, Solana did not agree. He looked terrible right now. Roland warned her that the hunting squad might have received the news and was heading here. The truth was that when they saw the scene, they would think Roland was the one who attacked and killed them. Solana thought painfully that her brother had never fought so recklessly before. The pain of losing her sister was about to drive him mad. Solana told herself she definitely had to become stronger to be a support for her brother. They had only taken a few steps when a group of villagers called out to them, telling Roland to please not leave.